Oh,
Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz. Over the last few years at least, there's been a lot in the news about police and about crime. So I figured we'd have somebody on who could talk about these things. Today's guest I've known for longer than I can even remember. He is a former Wethersfield police officer. He also was the youth officer in town. So whenever my friends and I would be getting into a mess, he'd be the guy to come and clean it up. Tom Pentalow, welcome to the show.
thank you so much. I feel privileged, Michael, to be here with you.
I feel privileged as well. So let me just dive right in. When did you know you wanted to be a cop, and what were the reasons you wanted to become one?
Probably just out of high school. Um, I grew up pretty poor. I shouldn't say poor. I grew up pretty, didn't have a lot of things, didn't have a lot of money. I had my own apartment when I was younger. My brother had a two-family. I lived in that. It was a flat with no heat. Going to high school, I used to have to sign my own notes, like Tom Pentalow will be late today, Tom Pentalow. They made me do that, no joke. So I remember there was a part-time job in Newington at the time, supernumerary, they called it, auxiliaries, not a full-time policeman. I remember, everybody was getting paid, well, $5 an hour, which was a good pay, and they had it for like $8 an hour. So I applied for the job. I went for an oral board, which I never heard of, where it was three police officers sit in front and answer questions. I was probably 19, 20 years old. And I wasn't dressed properly for it. Didn't know that you should wear a suit and tie to a job interview. Those are the things you don't learn when you are growing up. So I'm on a mission now to help, but I only wanted the job to pay for college. I never wanted to believe. I never wanted to be a policeman. I never, I had some good police officers growing up, but I also had some jerks, just like we all do. So I'm probably 19, 20 years old, and I plan on doing it for a few years to get me through college to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, and I still haven't figured that out.
And how long were you on the force? More than 20 years, gotta be,
Yeah,
right?
I was with Newington as a part-time cop, and then I became in 2000, late 2003. I'm sorry, 1983, and I retired in 2004 after my retirement date. I
Oh,
was afraid of medical insurance. They were taking things away, and as you get older, you see that golden ticket with a little bit of a pension in medical, and you say, "Hey, I'm young enough. Let's get something else." Um, you know, Being in that situation, I didn't have a college degree. I had a associate's degree. I thought that was good in the beginning. In 1983, that was real good. By time I retired in 2004, 2005, it really wasn't that great. So you have to look for different things.
so what was the hardest part of being a cop?
Um, Seeing things that you don't normally see in the day-to-day society, and the death, the dying, the good, the bad, always looked at as you're doing something wrong, the police officer, by scaring at people and looking at people. I think the hardest part was, first couple, I don't know, first few months on the job, I had people commit suicide in front of me. I had,
Oof.
you see blood, you see car accidents. I had a girl die in my arms in my career that was a young girl that was, in her teens. So those are the things you don't see. You don't see domestics. You see all your TV shows. Those are not as real as being in them and being a normal kid, a sensitive kid with issues himself, just like everybody else. So that was probably the hardest.
You used to try to help us kids when
Mhm.
when we were growing up, and I grew up in the projects in Wethersfield. Not probably what most people think of when they think
The
housing
projects,
projects,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
low income housing, in just a small little neighborhood. But us kids were troublemakers, and you would come around and you would try to talk to us and try to help us. And none of us trusted you. We used to always tell you, "Oh, don't trust Pentalow, don't trust Pentalow." And looking back, I can't imagine what it must be like when you're trying to help kids and you're trying to help people, and the very people you're trying to help don't trust you. They think that you're out to get them. I'd imagine that's got to be taxing.
I probably had the same attitude you did as a child, with the police officer. I grew up in the same exact situation that you did. In we call them the projects. They're not anywhere near projects that, that we all think of projects, but they're subsidized housing for people that can't. My mom had 5 kids she was raising, and we had a 2-bedroom apartment. So there you go. But probably same reason that you don't need to save them all, and you can't. Start with one. If I can get one, that one could save. The ripple effect could go out and help 3, which could help 9, which could help 18, and that's been my whole modus, MO, my whole life. I think I had one guy touch me in the appropriate way on the shoulder to say, hey, straighten up. Mike, you went through a lot in your life. You just went down the wrong path for a little bit. So you're on the right path now, and you have to stay on it. Every single person who listens to the podcast have their own journey or story that could be you. So I love when people just right away, they're all these type of people or all these type of people, that's sort of bullshit. I mean, look, a lot of people in jail should be in jail. Let's not kid ourselves. You know that just as well as I do.
Sure.
A lot of people also have the wrong knowledge going into life, and consequences are everything. I used to talk to you guys about that, and I will say there was a couple kids that I did save out of that area or out of town, or that come to me now saying, you made a difference in my life. And being 61 years old, you start saying, wow, okay, then it does pay off. So I got one, but I probably got a lot more than one. And, you don't always feel it or see it, but hopefully I did,
It's interesting to me you talk about saving one, because my best friend growing up, my next door neighbor, you recently told me a story how he approached you and said how you saved them. And when I think about when he and I were little kids, he was always into more trouble than I was. I mean, he was a troublemaker. I don't know how else to put it, but it's interesting how life turns out, because he, as well as most of the other kids I grew up with, grew out of it. Whereas or maybe it's not growing out of it, maybe is too simplistic, but whatever happened, he stopped down that road, whereas I didn't. But I've got to imagine that to hear that from a guy who's now 47 years old and tells you, you made a difference in my life, that's got to be rewarding, right?
Oh, unbelievable. But you also you're human, so you don't know how to take it. I don't have a huge ego. I don't have a huge story to tell per se. I understand it. And I did go back to some of the adults that helped me in my life, that some of them are passed away now, and some that gave me that break, like I tried to give you guys. I went back to them later and said, you're the reason I'm doing all this stuff. So yeah, the person we're talking about, that surprised me a little bit, because I did arrest him. I did do my job. And I used to tell you guys all that. Look, there's no reason we can't be friends. The only time that you're not going to like me is when I do my job if you did something wrong. That's it. There was no me against you. There might have been some adults that I had to do that with that had the same mindset I did, but mine was to do my job, and they were to get around my job. Criminal activity.
The interesting thing about it is we used to talk about how much we hated cops when we were kids. But the funny thing was, we were the ones doing what we weren't supposed to be doing. We were vandalizing, we were stealing, we were fighting, we were being belligerent, but we looked at the cops as the enemy. But another interesting thing is, like, whenever I hear people bash all cops, like all cops, there's so many cops that tried to help me when I was a kid. You, Kevin Dillon, whom you know, and there were others as well that used to try to talk to me, try to help me. I didn't want to hear it. I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. And, we see the results. But nonetheless, there were good people that were police officers. Now, to be fair, there were also cops that were not good people. And I think that goes to what you were saying earlier, that in all walks of life, there's good people and there's bad people. Because I remember when I was, I think, 9, and another neighborhood kid and we were playing in my yard, and the neighbors called the cops on us. They said that we were throwing spray cans at them, which we really weren't. And a cop comes and he says, and I said to him, can we help you, officer? And he says, don't try to sweet talk me, punk. I'm 9. So then he tells me, well, what's your name? I told him my name is Michael Liebowitz. He hears my last name. He knows my father, of course. And he says, oh, figures. He grabs my 9-year-old friend and my 9-year-old self and slams us into a shed. And when we went to report him, this cop happened to be Korean. And when we went to report him to the previous youth officer actually took my statement, the guy who was there before you. And he tried to talk me out of making the statement. He told me, well, he's from Korea. That's how they do things over there. And this is bad for his family. I'm 9 years old. And I'm just like, really? Like, that's what you're focused on? Not the fact that this adult grown male with authority assaulted 2 9-year-olds. But what I want to know from you is, you had to know that there's cops like that on the force. So for the cops who were like you and like Kevin Dillon, for instance, how do you guys think about the bad cops?
Well, I think you're looking at that. I would say you're looking at it wrong.
Okay.
Because there's just as many people that say I'm a bad cop, experience-wise, that they might have had some sort of interaction with me. And there's just as many people that say I was a good cop, right? So that interaction of the time, whatever in your mind, so the picture that you saw with that police officer threw you against the wall and all that stuff, we don't know what was going on in his head, and I don't know what's going on in your head. I'm not sticking up for him by any means. Just like I said, there's bad cops, there's good cops, there's good firemen, there's bad firemen, there's, it's really hard to say there's a good criminal, but, right? So I will say that what's going on in the person's brain when they interact with the police officer is the determination of a good and bad cop. Now, I'm not talking about the cop that's out there selling heroin and stealing and raping and robbing and using his authority to overmind everybody else or undermine everybody else. What I'm saying is, at that same time, I bet you if you went around your area, because don't forget, I arrested a lot of kids, but I was a juvenile officer. I did my job. You go talk to them. And I had relationships with you guys. And the funny thing is, you guys you weren't ratting on each other. But if I came to you and said, hey, Mike, where is, I'll use the name Steven. Hey, where's Steven? Where was he last night? Oh, well, I'm not saying anything. I know, but, somebody broke into your neighbor's car, and your mom's car might have got, oh, that could have been. Right away they go, that could have been Steven. I'm using the name Steven, right? And so it's just that's how you talk to kids, and you're not looking to rat on anybody, but, that relationship that you said I had with you, and all the kids that said they didn't like me, every single one of you talked to me on the side.
Sure.
When you're together, I'm that cop. I'm that asshole. I'm that. But when we talked one-to-one, we were humans. Even you being 9, 10, I had you before that. I had you after that. I saw you grow from just a kid of interest and smart to that. We all saw that, to a kid that was going down the wrong path with the wrong people. And, that old saying you and I talked about this already, and I've used it a million times, where the 2 brothers are sitting on a curbside next to their dad. And this was my whole story. And, a reporter goes up and talks to the first one. And the guy says, he said, hey, you're an exec, right? You work for one of those big Fortune 500 companies? He goes, yeah. He goes, how'd you get there? Like, how did you, I'm looking at your father, and the father's sitting in the gutter, alcoholic, drugs, everything. And the guy says, well, look what I had to look at. I can't look at that and not want to better myself and give my family everything I didn't have. But then you talk to the other brother, and he's a drunk next to his dad that does the drugs. You ask him the same question. He goes, look what I had to look at. That's the only thing I know how to become. So it's what we take of the information that comes in, and we use it to make ourselves better. I mean, look, I have a big family. Not everybody did well, Mike. Not everybody was educated. Not everybody didn't go to jail. Not everybody became a cop. Alcoholism and drug abuse was big in my family. So I don't want anybody to look at me saying, well, he made it. I didn't. I still have struggles. I still struggle every friggin' day.
Yeah, Tom, but when I say a good cop, look, you always treated us with respect. You were never abusing your power. You weren't physically abusing us. You weren't verbally abusing us. There are cops that do those things. And like it or not, people tend to group cops together. It might not be fair. I know it's not fair. Not it might not. It's not fair. But nonetheless, it's what happens. So when you're on the job and you see another cop acting like that, he's, maybe kicking a guy, throwing a guy around, swearing at a guy, maybe planting evidence. I mean, there's all types of things that happen. I have to imagine that the cops that aren't doing those things must not like it. I can't imagine that you're just sitting around saying, "Oh, well, that's him. That's fine."
No. I don't think anybody, and I'm going to say this, and you're not going to believe me, but did I see some abuse of power? Maybe in the heat of a moment, even myself. You chase somebody that just beat the crap out of a lady who stole the pocketbook, and you chase them Middletown in a high-speed chase. Your adrenaline is so high, and the guy gets out of the car and goes to run. And you jump over the fence, and you beat the living shit out of the guy, way more than you needed to. But is that human? Is that did I do that? I can't say that I did that, but I could see me doing it, and I probably did do it, but not all the time. Again, I want to go back to we're human. And I will say this that I just started to say. I never saw that. I didn't see any cops in front of me didn't say, hey, I'm going to go beat the crap out of that black guy, that white guy, that Puerto Rican guy. I didn't see the guy plant evidence. I didn't see the guy. Did I see swearing? We play sometimes a role within society. We have to play like we know everything going on. So some of these guys, all of a sudden, they got this swag on and they're talking like they're street people to feel like they're on the same level as maybe to get information, right? But I'm going to tell you, in Wethersfield, I didn't see it, Mike. I didn't see.
You've never seen a cop abuse his authority in Wethersfield? Come on.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. Not anything that I couldn't not. I wouldn't sit there. My heart and my wouldn't allow that to happen. If I saw somebody beat. Now, let's go back to it. You're beating the crap out of your mother, and we get there, and you're punching your mother. Do you think we see that? Yeah, we see it all the time. Do you have a soft spot for your mother? All of us, a lot of us do, right? So do we grab the guy and maybe tune him up a little bit more? Absolutely, we did. Does that happen anymore? No. There's cameras now. There's everything. I don't know that I could live within that society that gave me some discretion to be able to come to you, Michael, when you were a kid and say, all right, I just saw you doing this. Now it's pretty much the black and white. These cops they got cameras on. They've got everything's being tracked, and we wanted it this way. But I feel bad for them because they can't use their emotions a little bit to see that a good kid made a bad decision. You might have to ruin a kid. I'll give you a good example of that in today's society it wouldn't work. There was a kid from Wethersfield that was a star basketball player. And senior year, he signed with somebody. I caught him with his girlfriend drinking and smoking pot. Back then, pot was, remember, it was a bad thing. Yeah. Now it's like every old lady and old man does it,
Party on, dude.
Right. And, I had to now, if I had that same choice right now with the camera, with all that stuff, I might have to arrest this kid. He loses his scholarship. Now he went on to do really good things. And 20 years later, my boys are going to a camp, and he recognizes it. And he calls me over, my wife over, and said, hey, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Now I could go back to saying, just be a good cop, arrest him, do my job, end of story. I didn't. And I like that I didn't. And I didn't see a lot of abuse of power. And you could never get that over to anybody that's not on this side of the law, because most cops have ridden that rail, that razor's thin. To be a good cop, you have to understand the good guys and the bad guys. And going over the top sometimes is it's not acceptable, but it does happen. But I never saw what you're talking about.
So I just want to be clear about something. That was a hypothetical. I never punched my mother. No, no one
No,
ever
no,
came.
no.
No one ever
I didn't mean
came.
it.
No
No,
one
you
ever
wouldn't, because I
came.
wouldn't have let you.
No, no.
Don't forget, I knew your mom too.
Yeah. So just
We could
let's
talk about
be
other people,
clear
but
about
no,
that.
you were never like that.
No. See, I think of it a little differently. The excuse or the reasoning that, well, emotion's part of being human, and you gave the example of you're chasing a guy down. A Weathersfield cop once told me a story about he pulled the guy over. There was a long chase, basically you did, and the guy put his life in danger. And when he finally got to him, he beat the hell out of the guy. He was kicking him, and he told me the same thing. I was 20 at the time we were having this conversation, and he told me the same thing. Your emotions are flaring, this and that. But I think that we ought to expect more when people are being paid to enforce the law. So I've been in, I brutally assaulted people. My emotions got the best of me, and that's not a justification for that. They put me away for 25
What was
years.
your motivation though?
Well, sometimes
There's
it
a
was,
big difference.
well,
Yours was.
well, not always. I mean, sometimes you've got guys that are calling my house, swearing at my grandmother, yelling, saying things to my parents, threatening me and whatever. And then I fly off the handle and brutalize them, and I get arrested, and rightly so. I'm just saying that to say that because you're emotional or because you're angry then justifies that opens a big can of worms.
I never said justification. I said happens.
No, but you said, you kind of implied it was, I don't want to say understandable, but they're saying we're human is an implicit justification. It's saying that there's nothing we can do about it. That's just human beings. And from my perspective, if we're going to give people the authority to put people in cuffs, to lock them up, then we have to also expect a higher bar from those people to not respond with emotion and not fly off the handle. That's my perspective on the thing. I'm not saying that I don't understand. Look, if someone leads me on a high-speed chase where my life's at risk, and I'm thinking in the back of my mind, if I crash and die, what about my wife and kids? Who's going to take care of them? And it's all over because this guy's got a nickel bag in the car and he doesn't want to get busted. I'm going to be pissed the hell off too. I can understand the inclination to want to hurt that person. But at the same time, I'm not being entrusted by society to enforce the law. The cops are. So, I mean, do you see that perspective, that why there's people who view it the way that I do?
But me and you've had this conversation again before, but yes, I do 100%. But I also, you've come to the realization of, and we'll talk about the corrections officers, that they're breaking rules and laws inside of that building and telling you guys, shut up, you're in here for a reason. We can do what we want because we're better people than you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what you said to me.
In essence, yeah. It's not literally, right. But yeah.
Well, I mean, and I will say for me as a policeman, I did my job. I was never a guy that jumped on the bandwagon. Let's give out 100 tickets. Now, if you give out a lot of tickets, you stop a lot of people, and you do see the good and the bad and the ugly. But sometimes you have to arrest the good to get to the bad and the ugly. You got to keep, going. I just wasn't like that. I really just wanted to, because we miss the big picture sometimes when the policeman is part of that society and part of the community. We miss that. Just like you lumping the police officers, saying, well, we didn't like them. I get it. But I also was a father. I coached baseball, football, basketball in town. I went to church. I cared about people, but I was still doing a job that nobody else wanted to do. And when I got hired, I remember I called, who's my wife, was my girlfriend at the time. And I said, hey, we're loaded. She goes, what do you mean? I said, I got the job. She goes, no way. I said, yeah. I'm being paid $17,000 a year. It's like $8.80 an hour. I said, we're buying a Corvette and a condo right now. We're living in a local apartment. And again, I know I went off a little bit, but I could say that part of being a good policeman is understanding and not justifying. I'm not justifying anything that does wrong. I'm just saying I understand it. And looking back at you're telling us on a lot of these podcasts and stuff, you had a lot of opportunities to do exactly what I did, but you didn't.
That's right.
So I could have been a bad cop. Absolutely. And some people going to listen to this podcast and goes, he was a bad cop. He did this or he did that. I have no way of knowing that because it's 30 years ago, right? I know in my heart, my intentions when I put that gun badge, the gun and the badge on, was to try to do what was right. And it didn't always happen, it didn't. And certain things happened that I regret. There's not a lot of things I regret in the police department. There is some, when you look back at it, some people, died. Some people lived, which I can regret, some of the people. But you have to learn to live with what you did, and that's like anybody else. Those are consequences of life. And you look at a lot of police officers that have heart issues, have cholesterol issues, have stress issues, have body issues. I mean, look, sit in a car for 20 something years of your life with a gun belt, and all of a sudden you have to be on. Now, the bell goes off, and it's like being a rodeo star, right? Mm-hmm. Bell goes off. Now you're riding that as hard as you can. Then you jump off, and you got to go have maybe a cup of coffee, or you got to have a drink, or you got to have whatever it is. The adrenaline rushes that don't leave your body for years come out after you're retired, and nobody ever tells you that stuff.
After you retired, I obviously I was in prison at the time, but I remember seeing on the news that Wethersfield came up very high on a scale for racial profiling.
Yep. Absolutely.
So what I'm wondering is, while you were a cop, because that's a lot in the news, the racism in police departments, did you ever experience or witness or hear racist remarks on the part of other officers?
We had it wasn't very diverse when I first got out on the job, for police officers being Black, white, Puerto Rican women or vice versa. I didn't, Mike. And that's what really confuses me, only because when that whole study came out, done by a college, there was a lot of flaws in that. And I'm not sticking up for it or going against it, but when you looked at any kind of evidence-based, if you have a number that you want to get to, you can mismanage the numbers to make it seem like there was this many stops by this many people. And at night when you're stopping a car, you necessarily can't see the driver, right? Tinted windows, interior lights are not on, it's a dark area. So right away, I'm white. I can't hide my whiteness, right? So when I stop a car, right away, the first thing is, you stop me because I'm Black. You stop me because I'm brown. You stop me because I'm yellow. You stop me because I'm, whatever. I didn't see it, Mike. Is there racist cops? Absolutely there is. I didn't see it. And being a supervisor on the police department before I retired, I didn't see it. Did I see lazy cops? Absolutely I did. But that's society, so you can't, as a supervisor, you can't measure all 6 of your patrol that are on that shift the same way. You have to look at your strengths and weaknesses, just like any supervisor does with the guy that works at Stop and Shop. He's got 6 people working. He knows who the good ones are. He knows who the are. So did I see racism? I think everything seems to be in society now. Everything's racist. And we just throw that word on it. A lot of people don't even understand the word. They just throw it out there and just, that's racist, or that's sexist, or I think we're at a society now that even comedians can't joke around about.
That's true.
So I don't like the way society's going. I think even police officers are going to have a tough time doing their job appropriately. Now, maybe people want it that way, but the discretionary part that you talk about, the good police officer is a guy that controlled his emotions and had a little bit of understanding. You have to understand the law. You have to understand search and seizure. You have to understand, probable cause. You have to understand those things, and not necessarily always for the right reasons. It might be the wrong reason. You might have done something wrong, and now you have to figure out, shit, I got to fix this, without losing your job, going home to my kids, that kind of stuff. I could honestly say I never got involved in any kind of thievery, fuckery, none of it. I was, a pretty straight up cop. Did I see some stuff that I probably didn't like? Probably, but nothing to the point you're talking about racism. Straight up, I'm stopping all. Did we know who the guy or the cop or the male or female was a little bit more intolerant of, maybe different? Sure. Look, Mike, when I first got on, we'll use the word junkie. When I first got on, the whole statement was, well, once you're a junkie, you're always a junkie. They're just always going to be that way. And I used to think, wow, because I used to hear that about alcoholics too. We'd say, okay, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, right? Or a drunk. Once they're drunk, they're always drunk. They might label themselves like, hey, I'm sorry, Mike, I'm an alcoholic, I don't drink. But that's to control their emotion. But to say somebody's a junkie, always going to be a junkie, they're always going to be stealing or skeeving and stuff like that. I know that's 100% not true, because I have so many of my friends that have done drugs, have done wrong things, that are freaking great people now in the world. Why would I give up on that? But that was what I was taught when I first became a police officer. And that's just another divide in society to say, oh, that guy did this type of drug, so he can't be a good person. It's not true, So going back to your original statement, I didn't see a lot, Mike. I wish I could tell you, yeah, this guy, I'd love for this podcast to go, through the sky, that I say, yeah, this 5 of these guys are the most racist guys in the world, and I witnessed it. I didn't. I really didn't, and I don't know that I would allow it in front of me.
What are your thoughts on unions? Good or bad for police? Good or bad for society? Police unions, I'm talking about.
I was part of our union in our police department. What I hate about unions is it protects the piece of shit on the job, good, bad, or indifferent. It does. Corrections, teachers, police officers, the whole works. But it also helps the good workers too, that don't deserve to be screwed over. And I think they just have a little bit too much power for me. I was part of our union, and I didn't negotiate with a heavy hand. It's a lot easier to go in to a rational boss, sit down and say, here's what we have. What do you got? And try to come up with some. And sometimes you just couldn't do it. You have guys saying, no, we want this. And you go back, well, there's no money for that. So I did it my way. Again, a little bit of discretionary, a little bit of thought process goes into it, instead of just going in saying, all right, we're going on strike, or we're not going to do this or that. Did we do that on the police department? We did. If you were a little kid, we walked the picket line. Before I got there, they were walking a picket line because they were making such bad money when I first got on. We did a couple slowdowns because of medical costs and stuff like that. We were paying a lot back then for our medical. I get back to the union. I would say I understand unions. I think they're a valuable part of our society, but I think at this point, there's too much union control of the job. If you're a bad cop, you're a bad teacher, you're a bad person, you do something wrong, you should be fired. End of story. Nothing
Amen.
else.
Amen.
And I don't care. Well, I got 20 years on the job. You should have thought about that.
Yes.
Sorry. See you
yes.
later.
Well, see, that's my issue. And that's always been my issue with correctional office, wherever. Because I think people should be held accountable for their actions. I certainly was held accountable for mine. And
A little over the top, yeah.
well, perhaps, but nonetheless, I did bad things and I deserve to be held accountable. And I think that that's how it should be. I think people need to be rewarded when they're good and be held accountable when they're not. Tom, before I let you go, I want you to tell the audience the story you told me the other day about people using your name, people that get pulled over. You told a story, especially about a woman, and it's just so funny. I have to share it. Well, actually, I mean, I have to have you share it.
Well, no, it's funny because you'll hear it from any police officer that was a part of the community policing, which is, I was telling you now that the Weathersfield now, it's funny. I've been out for quite a long time, and they called me. They're trying to start a PAL program, which is a police athletic league. And in essence, really what it does is it brings society in. It opens your door with the children in town, and really starts that conversation of, it might not just be sports, it might be chess, it might be computer programming now, it might be decoding, right? So we had one of the police officers in town, probably one of the best police officers we had, just a good guy, was Al Powers, right? So when I first got on the job, Al was he had all his nicknames, Uncle Al, Dirty Al, we used to joke, because he was a little older than us and stuff like that, and he would go out with us. Now we're in our 20s. No, Al just passed, and he was in his 80s. I'm in my 60s, so 20 years older. So he was probably in his 40s at the time, and we'd go out after work to Smugglers Inn, or have a couple beers and talking. He was so knowledgeable of people, and he was a lot smarter than he was pretty quiet, but he cared, and you saw that. As a young cop, you saw that he cared. So I went to his the church service the other day. I missed the wake. I had something going. It broke my heart not to be there, to see all the other cops that I haven't seen in a while. But so I got to the church, and the son starts talking about that. When I first got on, these bumper stickers were out all over town. They were everywhere, and it says, "I know Al Powers." It was a bumper sticker. I know Al Powers. So the joke was, when you got stopped in town, you just said, "Hey, I know Al Powers." So you got out of a ticket, you got out of doing something. So I heard the story, and it brought me back to several times on the job. But I stopped the car, and I go walking up to the car, and the guy goes, "Hey, before you give me a ticket, I'm really good friends with Tom Pentalow." And I'm sitting there going, "Is this a joke?" Like, I got the big thing on my wrist, my chest. It says Tom Pentalow. I said, "Oh, you are?" He said, "Yeah." Sorry, let me see your license and registration. I look at it. He's from my hometown, but I really don't know him. I'm trying to figure out this guy. And I'm probably in my 30s, so I've been out of high school for a while. And I'm like, do I write this guy up, or what do I do? So I go back and I ask him a bunch of questions. So, is he married? I don't think so. I don't think he was. No, he was with a lot of women through his life. And I'm thinking, he didn't know me because I started dating my wife in high school. So, and then I said, "Do you know if he has any kids? Because I could call him right now." "Oh yeah, definitely doesn't have any kids. No kids." So I said, "I'll be right back." So I go back. I'm standing there thinking. I go back to him and I go, "Why don't you get out of the car for a minute?" He said, "Why? What do I do?" I said, "You know what? You need to get out of the car." He gets out of the car, and he's looking. I look at his driver's license, and I put it up, and I sort of put it next to my badge and my name tag. I finally said to him, "You see anything here?" And he looks, and his head drops. "You're Tom Pentalow?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You know how many times I use this to get out of tickets?" So I said, "Well, I definitely have it now." We had Polaroids at the time. I took a picture of him with a Polaroid, and I said, "This is going out. Everybody's going to know that you did it. So don't ever do it again." This kid thought, "What am I going to do with a Polaroid?" And it happened to me several times in my career. And, it was funny. I'd stop a car, and they go, "Hey, Mark Mealy, you know me from high school." I'm like, "I'm not Mark Mealy." It happened several times. It was definitely fun.
Well, look, Tom, we didn't get around to talking about crime. I wanted to talk about juvenile crime, especially. So you got to come back on. I got to have you
Anytime
talk
for you.
about those things. And hey, Tom, I love you, brother. Thank you for coming on the show. For now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. I'm Michael Liebowitz. Remember, like, share, comment, subscribe. Until next time.